What does your video sound like? Go to artlist.io.
Inside of me, you better watch out. If your enemy's a road ahead of full prophecy to be the greatest beast the world has ever seen. I feed him every day like the bones clean. I feed him all the hate and he grows me. And he gets caused real big, pissed off quick. And if you cross him, you might drop dead. Metaphorically, of course, settling the or never getting bored. Loves the blood and gold. Always wanting more freedom from the source. They don't really listen until they feel it for their body. And if you start shit, you'll be heartless in the darkness. Torn apart quick, you left scars ripped. You'll be chewed up and discarded. And this world ain't right, won't accept it. Negative energy, I expect it. Once it's in your mind, it's infectious. So fight for your life and reject it. You better give me space, I'm protective. My adrenaline spikes when I'm threatened. And if you stay in my way, I'm aggressive. Cause when there's no exit, I'll kill when I'm desperate. There's no exit, I'll kill when I'm desperate.
Yo, what's up?
And this world ain't right, won't accept it. Negative energy, I expect it. Once it's in your mind, it's infectious. So fight for your life and reject it. You better give me space, I'm protective. My adrenaline spikes when I'm threatened. And if you stay in my way, I'm aggressive. Cause when there's no exit, I'll kill when I'm desperate.
So, in all honesty, I'm not having the best of days today. I'm not really in the right mood for streaming. So, we're going to do a little bit more fun stuff tonight. We're probably going to do Mitra. I kind of wish that Tiff Jab was still doing YouTube politics because I'm kind of in the mood to hear something like that. Hey, why is that not working? There we go. Yes, I'm slouched down in my chair. No, I'm not sitting up straight. Yes, my toe is broken. Yes, I'm in a bad mood. We're gonna start off. You know what? I'm honestly in the mood to do some Brian Holdsworth. I really am. If we get, I might only do an hour. If we get more than 15 people in here today, I will do a Brian Holdsworth video tonight, regardless of what time everybody gets in. If not, we're just gonna do some randoms. Let's start off with some Suzu. I want to hear what she has to say about changing everything. From there, I think we're going to do some Mitra. Possibly do some Sephardic history. I don't really know. But yeah, I want to do some of that Mitra video that I didn't do. And I also kind of want to do the Eva Lupine. To be honest with you, I'm not really feeling doing theology today, so I think this is going to be a better idea if the Mitra video is still there. Oh, I'm not seeing it on my list. Maybe she did a Ruslan and deleted it. All right, so we'll do Mitra in a second. Let's start off with Susu. Let's see who's going with her. No, she's a popular person. There's gonna be a commercial. Yeah, that's right. La 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 la. Oh, okay. Let's see what's going on with her.
Frogs, it's Susu. Frogs is what I'm calling you guys. You're all my frogs now. Get used to it. You may have noticed that my last few videos have been different than usual, and that's because I'm moving in a new direction content-wise. Let me explain. put water into a cup. Factor 75 delivers fresh meals. Thank you, Factor 75, for sponsoring this video. Moving away from reacts is also better for my channel in the long run because showing other people's content, even with credit or permission, leaves you vulnerable to copyright, and you're not just at the mercy of copyright laws, but also a slew of other issues with YouTube TOS that can get you banished from the platform. That's basically what happened to my friends Henry and Jeannie of the
That also happened to Iron Mouse recently with some false claims that were hit against her because someone has a problem with her. Who has a problem with Iron Mouse, man? Like, what is wrong with you if you're hating on Iron Mouse? She's a fun person who happens to suffer from disability or illness or whatever you want to call it. I've had a cousin in her situation, it's more than one, but I've had a cousin in her situation, and to have an outlet through an avatar and to make money and have a good life, like, leave this person alone. Like, how fucking stupid do you have to be?
now terminated channel, MXR Plays. Rest in peace. Compilation-style reacts make you more likely to get secretly executed by YouTube and replaced with a family-friendly robot version of you. Which is funny because YouTube seems to have no problem with reacts that are just someone sitting there watching someone else's entire YouTube video with little to no transformative elements. Reacts are quick to make, even with me compiling all the content, and people really like them. Something that can be made fast and easily consumed by the masses tends to be lucrative. For anyone with financial responsibilities, the extra money for minimal work is alluring. Bills, taxes, social security, inflation, there's a lot of burdens the average adult must shoulder.
Listen, I need 4 models of the Great Unclean One. This is the forged world sculpt of Scabiathrax the Bloated, also known as Lord of the Blighted Pit, the Wind of Nurgle, and the Maggot Spore. He's a very big deal. This one is so I can build Rodigus the Rainfather, and the other 2 are so I can build the other 2 versions with 2 different heads and 2 different weapon sets. No, I don't want to magnetize anything.
There's just so many finances to keep track of. That's why a lot of my online existence has been about what was most profitable for me at the time without going totally morally bankrupt. Yeah, I could have made a lot of money from a cryptocurrency rug pull, but would it have been worth the bad karma? Maybe, actually. Shit's expensive these days. I'm not even bothered that I didn't get to focus more on what I liked, because ultimately I started content creation to make extra money. Things blew up a lot bigger than I expected, and now I don't have to worry about what's the trendiest and safest option. I can relax and try new things without fear. I could maybe even disappear from the online world at this point. But before I eventually go, I'd like to leave behind something I can look back on fondly and say that I did it for fun rather than just for the money. I'm not regretful or embarrassed of my older content. I just know I can branch out and would like to give it a shot. If it fails, I'm pretty sad already, but if it doesn't fail, then cool. Before I began actually talking to people at that point, his body instinctively flails to escape. Even when someone is
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How did you get 30?
To describe this. I dealt with a bit of the old parasocial Andes while I streamed, especially when I started incorporating my friends into my content more often. I know I mentioned earlier that I didn't have many friends and enjoyed being alone. Well, that's still partially true. Now I have quite a few friends. I still really like my alone time, but I also equally like the time I spend with them. Okay, maybe I like hanging out with my friends now.
Okay, let's go to Eva Lupine real quick, and then we go to Mitra.
Backlash
and
you
then we'll
got.
go to Jimmy. And after Jimmy, if we're still streaming, we will hit Tyler and Trent just to compare. Sorry.
Hello, everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel. And today I have another video for you all. Today, I regret to inform you that we have yet another viral story, courtesy of Twitter.com. Seriously, what is going on this year on Twitter? I swear I am seeing more stories about kink gain traction this year than I have ever seen in the previous 6 years I have been on the website put together. I have my own theories about why that is, but That'll have to be for another. A combination of light to dark red marks around her shoulder area and down her chest muscles, and a few stripes running up from the top of her chest on the opposite side. I am not showing the full photos here to 1, help preserve her privacy, and 2, because putting them on YouTube would probably get me immediately drop kicked by the YouTube community guidelines spot. But in any case, the photo that really seemed to grab attention was the second one, the one that was focused on her thighs. And essentially what it showed was on her thighs, they appeared to be covered with this large, continual bruise about the size of a large dinner plate. For my estimation, they already seemed to be on the way to healing. The center of each was a bullseye of yellow with another ring of yellow. If you have been on FetLife, if you are kinky and you do impact play, this is maybe a slightly above average photo of a bruise. I know I have for sure seen worse, darker, larger bruises, literally black and blue in tone from somebody's calves to the very top of their shoulders. It might be somewhat remarkable that it focused on the front of the thigh.
This also happens if you have a partner who's into martial arts or quote unquote extreme sports, although that title has kind of disappeared. But as someone who trains people who fight, or used to train people who fight, I guess I should say, because I'm not doing it anymore. Yeah, you'd walk around and your friends would all have bruises, and these are your clients, these are your friends, and people make assumptions. And to be very honest, if the female involved looks a little bit more butch, if she has a girlfriend, people usually don't give a second look. But if the person looks more femme, if they got a boyfriend, if they're on their own, they immediately assume the worst, even if the person is fit and in shape. So I do think that there is a kind of paranoia there, but it goes beyond TV shows and movies influencing how you interpret stuff, because you're influencing, you see something in a movie, you got to make a flash judgment. This has to mean this, this has to mean that. That's not how it really works. It's kind of like how bullets go through car doors in real life, but in movies they somehow bounce off, that kind of thing. So you got a problem there already with perception versus reality, and then you get into this kind of weird judgment where religious people are going to start talking, and I say religious people, but it's not so much that they're religious. These are people who wear the religion as an outfit. These aren't people who are necessarily religious or not religious. But they wear their religion, their faith as an outfit. And in doing this costuming, they will judge other people based on their activities, even if they're not also Christians, and that does become a problem. And apologists don't help this. Because they act as if everyone's following under the same rules, and they're not. So we'll get into that, I think, in a little bit.
But, hey, everyone has a preference. Some people love floggers. Some people love canes. Some people love getting bruises on their back. Other people prefer their legs. To each their own. I'm telling you all of this so you can paint an accurate picture in your heads before coming to any conclusions. This isn't some extreme needle play thing. There's no blood anywhere. There's no hooks. There's no busted lips, no open wounds, or bruised eyelids. Basically, if you put this on FetLife, it would seem like the aftermath of a moderately intense scene for a dedicated masochist. It's not the kind of thing that would cause discourse in kinky circles or on social media for kinky people. But this didn't happen on kinky social media. It happened on Twitter. So I was first alerted to all this happening via a quote tweet someone I followed shared, which eventually led me to the original post. Based on this quote tweet from one Dr. Snow, I thought I would be in for something much more intense. And this is, to be clear, this is not me grandstanding or trying to make it seem like I'm the kinkiest kinkster who ever lived. Far from it, but the combination of the intensity of the photos and the intensity of the public backlash it got made me think, ooh, we've got a problem here and we need to communicate about it, because nothing truly extreme is really happening. And that's what I want to try and communicate.
And again, this is when you hear religious people, and this is very hypocritical. So if you actually go into kink communities, or if you have any experience with FetLife or any of these social media sites, you'll find out very quickly that these are pastors, preachers, these are religious people. Are there people from religious families that want to escape from that? That it's a whole subgenre within the kink community where it's people sexualizing or trying to get away from the austerity of a very austere life. And in doing so, they play the hypocrite. So they're, like one of my favorite songs says, you're going to try to play the Lord. You're going to be, on Sunday, you're going to go to church. And then Monday through Friday, you're going to try to, date the people who are in your congregation. It's it's a bad thing. It's a bad deal, and I think that hypocrisy should be called out. I do think it is a problem when you're if when you're judging people for a sin you yourself are guilty of. I think that is very hypocritical and dangerous. So I do think it's funny when you see people like Trent Horn or Matt Fradd attack people for being in the kink community, not necessarily for being queer, not necessarily for engaging in odd, whatever they would call odd or freakish sexual behavior, but just being within the community itself and participating in whatever level, even if it's a non-sexual kink. So I do think that is a problem. And you don't see the very same people batting an eye when they're, I'm going to say siblings, but you can put a different word there, read erotica, read romance novels, which are way worse and have have the same kind of role play and all that kind of stuff. But these religious people don't have any problem with literature, with trash novels being in their home and being read by anyone. But yet, when it comes to someone's private life who's not a religious person, they will judge their community or how they dress or how they look. So I do think that is unfair and a little bit bizarre because it's not how people interact with each other in real life. In real life, the very kinky person and the very vanilla person are sitting right next to each other at the dinner table. So it's a weird hypocrisy to get onto the internet and suddenly I'm going to be the judge of everyone. But in my personal life, that's different because I understand the situation. My sister's struggling. My son or daughter is struggling. My father, my brother, my best friend is struggling with this. But online, I'm going to judge you for it. And it's this weird thing because anonymity is no longer a thing online. These are, everybody knows who Trent Horn is. No one's calling him Counselor Trent. So it's very weird that as YouTube is changing and becoming more formulaic and more about entertainment, these vestiges of the older shitposting YouTube, the people who have stuck around have kind of lost the thread. They're no longer on the defensive. They feel like they've won their place. But just like with Iron Mouse, to go back to what we were watching a second ago, your YouTube channel can be struck down out of nowhere. So I think Trent's being a little too arrogant. I think a lot of the apologists are being too judgmental. And I get it. They don't like this stuff, but this stuff has been around since before the internet, and the internet didn't invent any of these things.
Unfortunately, though, Twitter's reply hierarchy is now permanently messed up thanks to their decision to rank paying users above everyone else, so often the worst of the worst gets pinned to the top. Some initial replies to the photo said things like, "That's abuse, not safe doming." A lot of people seem to be fairly confident these marks came from a near miss with a vehicle, and darling, hope you get better soon reply any similar level of awareness. Not all of us post photos of our bruises on Twitter, sure, but lots of us have family and vanilla friends and coworkers to worry about us.
This is what I was just talking about, which is in real life, the very kinky person, the very atheistic person, the atheist is married to a Christian. Okay? Their daughter or their son is a different religion. This person who's super straight and that person who's queer and this other person who's LGBT and this other person who's LGBTQ, they're all working together at the same workplace. So this kind of weird imaginary, I don't even know what to call it, some weird redlining, but these kind of imaginary boundaries that don't actually exist in people's real life show up on the internet in really ugly ways, especially when you're talking about entertainment or movies or video games. I think of Melanie Mack as an example of exactly what goes wrong when this goes too far. You just become you become a hate monger, you become a hateful person. And I think that was the danger in what Lauren Chen was doing. And so even though I'm sorry for her situation and I hope she's innocent, you kind of get what you deserve. You're spreading hate, and then you get found out that you're a grifter. You're fucked. You don't have a YouTube career anymore. You don't have a Twitter career anymore. You're out. You're no longer a trusted source. So I think that you really have to be careful about these things when you're overgeneralizing what the other side is doing, because when you're at home with the person who's on the other side, you're not talking to them that way because you can't. Because if you did talk to them that way, they would simply get out of your life and leave. So these flash judgments, like what you see with Liz of TikTok, you're ruining people's lives. It was the left that was doing this just a few years ago. Just a few years ago, before Libs of TikTok started doing her thing, it was the left that would just go crazy and go after people for holding on to their religious identity or holding on to their religious principles or some other principle. Now it's the right doing the same thing. This is ludicrous. This was bad in the 80s. It was bad during the Satanic Panic. It was bad during the homophobic panic. It was bad during the goth panic. It's bad now. It's video games aren't killing people. Books aren't brainwashing people. Chill out, man. Like, let this person be who they are. If they go to hell, that's their choice. It's not your job to save them. It's your job to tell them the message. And if they don't want to hear it, it's their right to reject the message.
Especially in the summer, you have to be concerned about someone noticing that rope mark, or somebody looking at maybe a scar from a previous scene, or somebody getting close enough to be able to make out that that bruise is kind of in a weird pattern. You don't want to have to explain why you're wearing pants in the middle of a heat wave, or worse yet, to have to gently tell your parents that yes, you are fine, and please do not ask any more questions about the bruise they saw by accident under your sleeve. So maybe it is worth it at this point to talk about what some of those differences are. How can you start to tell a consensual bruise from one that got left by a truck? So, location, first of all, is a really big one here. Consensual kink markings will tend to be concentrated on fleshy areas like the butt, thighs, and back, and sometimes on the chest as well. They'll often be grouped and symmetrical. Marks left by other things like an accident or non-consensual harm tend to be more random and dispersed throughout the whole body, particularly on.
And this is harder if your partner is a professional fighter or amateur fighter or deep into martial arts. But again, the bruises will be in a general location. So usually the bicep, sometimes the neck, not often. But if you get hit in the face, you get hit in the face, and it just looks that way. I know when I was doing some light sparring when I was selling cars, and I'd go to work with a bruise or something, I'd have to explain it to people. Like, did you get into a fight? It's like, no, me and my friend were fucking around. We were just having a good time. Like, you have to explain these things. I was doing some sword fighting, and I was fine. And then I went home and I went and I grabbed my machete to cut something down, and I cut my finger. So I didn't cut my finger, doing fencing, but I cut my finger doing some gardening. People still know you fence, so they're going to ask, like, hey, did something happen? And you got to answer these stories. So however much you let someone in, you have to answer that much information when they see what they perceive as a red flag, even if it's to yourself.
On the face, neck, hands, forearm, joints, and stomach. Popular kink toys like whips and canes, things you aren't likely to see in a vanilla context, leave telltale marks. I wish I could show you the photos again, but community guidelines bot, and you gotta worry about it. And I can't really show you, like, hey, these are the marks that a whip leaves. So they had planned on doing, or they discussed ahead of time. It wasn't random. It didn't come out after an argument or a fight or while helpful towards strangers on the internet. So, on the off chance you are one of those people who thought they were leaving a well-intentioned comment when they replied, girl, this is dangerous. Let me dispel you of that illusion right now. Even if this is something that caused the person harm, they didn't ask for your opinion. They didn't ask for your help. You don't know them. There is jack all you can do from 3,000 miles away. Unless they captioned the photo something like, send me good vibes or whatever, keep your help to yourself, because it probably is not actually help. And second of all, you have no way.
And that's kind of the case with people who are seeing the demonic in the secular. If you have a kinky friend, they're not possessed by a demon. They're just kinky. If you have a friend who's, queer, and this isn't so much a problem anymore. Maybe like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this would have been a problem. But there was a time where meeting a queer person in the wild was like, seeing a zebra. It was like, ooh. No, it's pretty common. I don't see too many straight people freaking out anymore like I used to see. I used to see it. I still hear it. The thing about having muscles and a beard and balding is that no one's assuming that you have any kink or any queer in your life. So they just say things, and people say a lot of homophobia. A lot. And it's not a little, it's a lot. And it is sometimes very gross. So I do think it crosses the line, even if the person is not there in the room, even if you're like, well, I have gay friends or whatever. You're still being extremely homophobic the moment that person leaves the room. And you're talking trash about that person because you want to defend your heterosexuality. You want to make sure no one thinks you might be just because you're friends with. I don't know. I don't know what you're defending, but the jokes aren't funny. And they are cruel. And I don't like it. I usually, and mind you, I have muscles. I usually will stand up and say, that's enough. Stop. I don't always, but usually I do. Sometimes I just walk away. But there are times where, you don't know where the joke's coming from. And you're like, look, I don't know if you're trying to be homophobic or if you're trying to be funny. But either way, it ain't working. Stop. And that's kind of a big deal. And when it comes to kink and it comes to alternate lifestyles, remember when that was a term? It's, Wicca kind of died out. But when you meet someone who's a witch now, the first thought, I've never seen anyone go, oh no, it's a demon got her. It's always like, oh, you're a little bit of a hippie. Okay. Okay, you smell a little bit like patchouli, and you got a lot of incense in your house. Fine, it's like it's okay. I mean, so you don't shave, and you think you can cast spells, you just kind of laugh, you kind of giggle about it. You don't really take it offensive, and you move on. And if they're cool, you become their friend. If they're not cool, you just you pray for them and you move on.
Way of knowing whether or not something is dangerous from a photo. I can sometimes make an educated guess because I've seen several thousand photos of typical kink bruises, and I have been in the scene for nigh on a decade, and I know what they look like on me as well. But most people...
And I don't have that for kink, but I do have that for fighting. I can tell when someone's... not all the time, but I can usually tell when someone's a fighter, and I can usually tell if they know what they're doing or if they don't know what they're doing. Where the bruises are in their hands, where the bruises are, if there's bruises on their hands. So first off, if they're bruising on your hand, you're already punching wrong. If you're scraping, if you're doing one of those, cardio boxing things, I can already tell you're learning bad technique. Your hands are your weapons, and you need to take care of them. And if you're damaging your hands and you're tearing through your skin, you're not taking care of them. That you're hurting your weapon. You're hurting your most valuable tool. So there are things you can look for to be like, hey, this guy's doing it right. This guy's doing it wrong. This guy knows what they're doing. I think I told you I broke my foot. I know I told you all I broke my foot, my toes, hitting a weight. Well, when they took the X-ray of my foot, the spacing between my joints is amazing. My foot looks excellent. I've been doing martial arts since I was 12, 13 years old. I've been kicking heavy things with my bare feet, with my flat feet. The dorsal, the heel, the ridge, the toe, like the fat toe, the balls of my feet. Like I've almost every part of my foot is used when I kick, in different styles of kicks. You know, I do different styles of martial arts. My feet look beautiful. They look like a young person's foot. The doctor was amazed by it. The X-ray tech was amazed by it. You know, I'm 44 years old and I have great feet. And I'm diabetic and I have great feet. So proper kicking technique, proper punching technique doesn't just protect the person you're fighting against. It also protects you as an athlete, as a person. And this is true for running. This is true for bicycling. Don't listen to the bro gym guys. The bro guys don't know what they're talking about. You know, you want to do proper technique. So, yeah, no, what she's saying is very true. If you've been in a certain scene, you'll recognize certain techniques and you can tell if someone's doing it proper or not. I'm not talking about doing a kata properly or doing a shibari scene perfectly. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about getting the knot just right. I'm talking about the person's physical appearance, the way the person carries themselves, the way the person does certain techniques. You can tell whether or not they know what they're doing or not. And if they don't know what they're doing, yeah, that's when you go like, hey, question. Otherwise, if you don't know anything about the scene, if you don't know anything about martial arts, you don't know anything about kink, you don't know anything about taboo, maybe don't have an opinion of it. Say it's not for you. Say you don't want that in your family. And leave it at that.
People do not have the experience necessary to do that. And also, it is still not any of your beeswax. What do you think publicly shaming someone for this is going to do? Because I'm willing to bet that 9 out of 10 times, all that happens is the person keeps doing what they were doing, but they stop sharing it and just do it even more privately, making it even harder for them to get the help you think they might need. And for the love of God, please stop confusing bruises with danger. Some of the most dangerous things you can do in kink, like choking, rarely leave a single mark behind. You can get bruises in ways that are safer. You can get bruises in ways that are more high risk. This is not something you can always tell from the outside. I would love to study the psychology of people who seemingly know enough about kink to leave a comment like, this isn't safe doming, but know so little about it at the same time they don't understand how typical what is shown in the photo is. You can't always tell what's going on from a single snapshot. Some people bruise like peaches when you breathe on them too hard. Other people, you could whip them for 2 hours and they would not have a single mark left on them after maybe 24 hours. Different people have different bodies. You can't really tell how dangerous something is just from a bruise. So,
and on that note, you know, I went rucking a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and I had rhabdomyosis from going on a 1 hour ruck. I worked out every day. I exercised every day. I was doing fine. But my body couldn't handle the ruck. It just couldn't. So you really don't know what's going on in someone else's body, and you really don't know what someone else's limit is. So something that could be totally safe for you could be totally dangerous for someone else, and something that could be totally risky for you could be like a Monday for someone else. So again, don't judge. Don't put your projections onto someone else.
don't try to make it more than it really is, I guess. Now, One thing I do also want to talk about is I have a theory that there is a sizable minority of the population who have a kink for me, not kink for thee attitude about things like this. They probably enjoy true crime or spicy book talk novels or kinky fan fiction. A lot of them probably only engage in kink in their heads, and so they have a version of it that is totally different from real life. Or when they do engage in it in real life, it's the kind of thing that avoids any mark-leaving masochism, pleasure doming, blindfolds, etc. I would wager a lot of them like hair pulling, choking, and biting, and don't see which one of those things on the list is not like the other. But
It's kind of like Fan on her when she went on Uncle Sasha Gray's dating show, and she was, she was saying how she thought she was kinky, and then everybody else on the thing was laughing at her like, none of that's kinky. There are levels to these things. Like what's kinky for you might not be kinky for someone else. The fact that kink has become its own thing and all these certain activities are listed as kink. And like, a video of hers of Eva Lupine said we watched before, which is where there's a lot of religious ritual that's adopted into kink play. If you take it out of kink and put it in the world of religion, you're just being a devotee. So a lot of this judgment is not only hypocritical, it's misdirected. So you could be upset that it's blasphemous, but being upset that someone's getting sexually turned on by something that you think is pious, that's kind of not their fault for enjoying a thing that you yourself enjoy in a different way, so you're splitting hairs sometimes, and you're not taking into consideration the context of the situation. So I think it's safer to just say what your limits are and what your beliefs are, and say, this is what I'm not willing to do, and I don't want to be with someone, or I don't want someone in my life that does these certain things, and if you do these things, I don't want to participate. And that's a fair line to have. That's a perfectly fine line to have. But when you're going after people for doing something in a different context that you yourself do in a specific context, that it's okay if it's in this context, but it's not okay in that context. Well, now you're being the arbiter. Now you're doing the judging. Now you are the person who is crossing the line, because as long as everything is consensual and everyone's, I would say even nowadays at how weird the internet is, I'd say over 21, shut up. If no one's getting killed, no one's dying, it's really not your place to tell someone else how to live their life. You can say how you live your life, and you can say this is the right way, this is how people ought to live. And you can then say, if you want to live this kind of lifestyle, if you want to be good with God, if you want to get to heaven, here's what you got to do. Here's how someone who lives this lifestyle lives. You can do that. But when you start telling people that reject your lifestyle how to live their lifestyle, I don't think anyone has to listen to you at that point.
Combination of all of these things, or some of these things, leaves them feeling informed and aware of kink enough to judge the safety and sanity of what other people do, when really they have just barely turned over the first stone in the middle of a quarry. Honestly,
Okay.
It's situations like this that help me understand why people wanted to move away from SSE and to rack. There is nothing wrong at all with engaging in kink on this level, of course, except for when it causes you to become the kink police. Check thyself before ye wreck thyself, as the scholars of old used to say. And
Where's
just in
Nietzsche?
case there was any doubt that the help was unwarranted and unwanted, in the days following the photo going viral, the original poster had this to say, quote, regarding BDSM, just like with trans people or SW, your concern doesn't sound like you care for me. It sounds like you're judging me. And alright, this is my last post about it, but the amount of trans people who told me to seek help was so effed up. Like, if you sound the same as transphobes, maybe you should work on that. And in my opinion, these responses get to the heart of the matter. At the end of the day, it is infantilizing to police what grown adults are doing on the internet. And
I think she's being a little bit overbroad there. I think there just have to be some limitations.
Fake
Give me
show
a second.
concern
I'm
for
gonna.
them that they
I'm having
didn't
trouble
ask
finding
for
the
and are
video.
not actually helped by. To assume that you know better than they do, or that you know better whether or not they enjoyed it or wanted it, is just so ignorant. If you have no idea what you are talking about, any care is going to come across as hollow. It is likely to be perceived as performative at best and judgmental at worst. And to be honest, it's not even just perceived as at some points. It just is. If you see a photo of a stranger and your first reaction, despite them saying it's consensual, is to go, "Sweetie, you are being abused. Seek help, please," you are part of the problem. Abuse, DV, relational harm is not a mere set of actions. It is not giving someone a bruise. It is a systematic form of coercive control that no amount of words will stop. The fact that we as a society have reduced the definition of abuse down to when someone hits you or when you get a bruise from your partner is a tragedy. I have personally seen the harm of this play out in real life. I know people who have told themselves they could not possibly be experiencing abuse because the other party never laid hands on them. But the fact of the matter is, while a photo of a bruise may be used as evidence in a courtroom, a photo alone cannot tell you if someone is experiencing abuse.
FYI, anyone who used to watch Wee Lass, or Wee Scottish Lass, I think her name used to be, she just hit 50K subscribers, man. That is awesome. Okay, we're done with Evie Lupine for now. I love her content. I love her thoughts. I love the fact that me and her are completely different sides of the spectrum on most things. So I'd love just hearing a different opinion. I want to find Mitra, though, so I'm looking for it right now. We could do That Darling, but That Darling really hasn't been doing it for me when it comes to, like, getting me to argue or getting me to really care. I would recommend looking up Literature Cafe. She has a really good video right now on Kantian philosophy, talking about practical reason. I just listened to this morning as I was doing my morning routine. It was great stuff. Let's see. Just going through looking for my video. This might have been the wrong way to look for it. Oh, Buzz Along has a good episode about gravel and going through the Badlands. I got a gravel bike based on my love of Buzz Along and a few other, like, shifter. I really regret the gravel bike. I really do. I don't like it. I don't like it. I love my mountain bikes. I love my hardtail. I love my full suspension. I should have saved up money and got an enduro. I am not loving the gravel bike. I know everyone loves the gravel bike. I do not. Dan McKellen on Creation Earth. Truth Unites. Revival in college campuses. Hey, some guy named Deconverted Man made a video. Let's see. I'm just looking for Mitra, man. As soon as she pops up, I'll put it on. Anybody has any questions for me in the chat? You know, you guys want to talk to me right now while we're looking for this video, talk to me. We got time to kill. I kind of want to buy Book of Hungry Names. I really love playing, or in theory, playing the World of Darkness games, but there's no one for me to play with. Like, the only guy I know who's into it, it's a small group. The only group that I know is into it, they're truckers, so they're never here. So I'm thinking about doing it through a video game. Agatha All Along. Anybody watching? I want to check it out. Okay, we're gonna do Jimmy Aiken while I look for Mitra. We're gonna be listening instead of watching, at least for the. We all struggle. Okay. Then hopefully you guys can hear him as I'm looking for this video.
Just a reminder that if you like this content, you can help me
day in and day out, sharing the real
out. He's talking to these young people, and
folks know that there's a catch because the Holy Father was not speaking in English, and he was also not speaking. He's not also not being translated, I think, initially into English. Give us a little bit of the background of this interfaith gathering, if you would, Jimmy.
Well, it's part of the Pope's most recent international trip, or apostolic voyage, as they call them. Here, he went to a number of different countries in Southeast Asia, one of them being Singapore. And Pope Francis sometimes he'll have texts that are prepared for him ahead of time. But sometimes he just sets those aside and talks off the top of his head. And so that's what he did in this occasion. He had a prepared speech to read to these young people, but he got all enthused about he's talking to these young people and he really wants to connect with them. And so he decided to set aside his prepared remarks and just give some off-the-cuff reflections. And this is something that, popes periodically do. I remember once when Pope Benedict XVI was preparing to baptize some people, he just set aside his remarks and talked directly from his heart. So this is not unusual for popes to do. But popes have different skill levels in terms of phrasing themselves precisely when they're speaking off the top of their heads. And that isn't always one of Pope Francis's strengths. When he gets off script and just speaks off the top of his head or off the cuff, he sometimes says things that reflect the truth, but also reflected in an incomplete way. And that's led to a number of incidents where there's been confusion. In this case, one of the things that he
That's the understanding of the year.
Express was the role of evangelization or sharing the gospel with people. Now, Pope Francis knows all about sharing the gospel with people. In fact, that's one of the key priorities of his papacy is evangelization. In fact, the very first document that he issued as Pope, that he wrote, is called Evangelii Gaudium, which means the joy of the gospel. And it's all about evangelizing people and sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ with them and helping them become Christians and so forth. So he's very well aware of the priority of evangelization. But what he did here was he didn't mention that, and instead he focused on interreligious dialogue. And if you read what he says about interreligious dialogue...
And just to be clear, that's something I've said in the last 2 or 3 videos where I brought this up, which is people keep on missing the context. They mention the context, but they keep on missing it in their criticism. He was speaking to a specific group about a specific thing. He wasn't speaking about the thing that everyone... He wasn't speaking about universalism. That just wasn't what he was talking about. He was talking about interfaith dialogue to a group of people who were involved in interfaith dialogue.
In isolation from knowing about his emphasis on evangelization, it gives a very different impression. And so I think it's important in looking at these comments to realize these are comments being made from someone who is thoroughly committed to evangelization. So they're not giving you the whole picture of what he thinks on this subject. It's just a partial.
Whoa, 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 whoa. We're not doing that.
Collection of truths.
Let's do this. Let's pull up the transcript of the remarks. I'm just going to read this and correct me if this sounds wrong, but this is from the Vatican themselves, so this is their translation. He says, this is very important because if you start arguing my religion is more important than yours, or mine is true, yours is not true, where does this lead? Somebody answer. And then one of the young people said destruction. Holy Father says, that is correct. All religions are paths to God. I will use an analogy. They are like different languages that express the divine, but God is for everyone, and therefore we are all God's children. But my God is more important than yours. Is this true? There is only one God, and religions are like languages, paths to reach God. Some Sikh, some Muslim, some Hindu, some Christian, understood.
And I was just watching Brian Hollingsworth shit on people for doing exactly what Jimmy's doing right now. I really do have a problem with Brian Hollingsworth. I can forgive him a million times over. That's not really the point. I don't like the things that he says. Trent Horn also did a wishy-washy, I don't like what the Pope said thing. Tyler Marshall is a heretic. He is a heretic. He's not. Don't listen to Tyler Marshall. If you're a Catholic and you watch my channel, I don't know why you'd watch my channel. I say bad words and I kind of don't give a shit. But if you're a Catholic, and I'm Catholic, and I am Catholic, I'm saying, if you're a Catholic and you're watching me, who's also a Catholic, my advice to you is don't watch Tyler Marshall. He's leading people into schism. He's leading people straight to hell. Stay away from Tyler Marshall.
Interfaith dialogue among young people takes courage, and then he goes on to speak about the importance of dialogue and the courage to have that dialogue. So what people are really upset about, understandably so, is it sounds confusing to say that all religions are paths to God, and that they are like different languages that express the divine. We know, I know the Holy Father knows, and this is the official teaching of the church, that there's only, Jesus Christ is the true God. There is one God, and the church, it is through Jesus Christ and his church that people receive salvation. So help us unpack this and why what the Holy Father is saying is actually not heresy, but that it's misunderstood here, what he's getting at with his words.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to kind of back up one sentence to get the beginning of the paragraph where he says this, where he introduces the topic, because it frames the issue, and then kind of take it piece by piece and say, what's he trying to communicate here? So he begins this part of the discussion by saying one of the things.
And I want to be clear, Jimmy Akin's not Pope splaining. If Jimmy Akin wanted to criticize the Pope, he would. I know it seems like he's defending the Pope all the time, but trust me, if anyone wants to stand up to the Pope and get away with it, it would be Jimmy. Jimmy is just being honest with his answers. Jimmy's very esoteric. Jimmy's a very weird dude. I like Jimmy Akin a lot, but he is the weird uncle at the party. And so, you just have to accept the fact that Jimmy's coming at things a little bit differently than the majority of the people would. But in situations like this, where the majority of the people are panicking over what Pope Francis says, you need someone who's a little bit calm and a little bit, not disengaged, because he's very engaged, but just a little step away from the drama, because he's coming from an outsider's perspective, even though he's very in the Catholic Church. And you need that. You just need that.
Things that has impressed me
I realize
most
I'm
about
talking
the
about myself when I say everything I just said, but I love Jimmy Akin, so don't take that in a weird way.
young people here in Singapore is your capacity for interfaith dialogue. So that's the topic. He's talking about interfaith dialogue, which is something we need to have. That's even part of evangelization, is having conversations with people of other faiths and learning about theirs so you can learn how to more effectively share Jesus Christ with them. So the topic here is interfaith dialogue. And then what he goes on to say is about how we conduct interfaith dialogue. And that's where he says this, meaning interfaith dialogue, is very important, because if you start arguing, my religion is more important than yours, or mine is the true one, yours is not true, where does that lead? He asks a question, invites someone to answer, someone answers destruction, and he says that's correct. So what he's pointing out here is that when you do interfaith dialogue, you don't just want to get into arguments. It's argument that he's focusing on here as unhelpful. That's different than dialogue. He's all in favor of talking to people of other religions. What he's not in favor of is getting into destructive arguments, or arguments that lead to destruction. He then says all religions are paths to God. Well, there's an element there that's true. St. Paul, for example, in his discussion at the Areopagus in Acts chapter 17, acknowledged that the Greeks were seeking God in their religion, and he says, I found an altar dedicated to an unknown God. They recognized there's probably a God we're not worshiping, and we ought to worship him, so they made an altar to an unknown God. St. Paul says what you worship.
I should honestly do a little bit on found cause, especially now that my audience is kind of balanced out, and I'm not as, I was doing really good, and then I kind of dipped, and then I'm kind of right here. I really should do some found cause stuff again.
Worshipped in ignorance, I now proclaim to you. And he then goes on to quote Greek poets who were regarded by the Greeks as divinely inspired. And he quotes, how God is near to each of us, and God made us so that we might seek after him and perhaps find him. And he's quoting these pagan authors to make these points. So St. Paul acknowledged that even a religion as bad as the Greek one, with all its polytheistic gods, was a way of trying to strive after God and grow closer to God. So that's true. And that's what the Pope is saying here. All religions are paths to God in that sense. That doesn't mean they're all going to get you to an accurate understanding of God, but they're a way to seek after God. And then
I think everything Jimmy's saying here is 100% accurate.
Says, I'll use an analogy. They are like different languages that express the divine. Okay, well, there's an element of truth there too. Just like St. Paul indicated, the Greeks had some truths about God that they expressed in their way, but now he's going to go on to complete that with an understanding from a Christian perspective. But you could still say, yeah, different religions have insights about God, and they express them in their own ways, so they are kind of like languages. This is something that the early church fathers in the very early Christian centuries talked about. They didn't use this analogy, but they used another one where they said God has let little bits of truth about him appear in all these different religions, and they called them seeds of the gospel. So that was the metaphor they used, not languages, but seeds. So you've got all these seeds that God has planted in these other religions that then can be used to help them understand the fullness of truth. So
I think that's excellent. I think we're going to end this portion here. Let's move on to Mitra. I did find the video. Give me 1 second while I do some transposing over here. Let's see. And like I said, she's a little bit low energy on this one, but right now I'm a little low energy, and right now the audience isn't very big, so I think this is a perfect time to do this video. Yesterday, when we were more hyped up, it kind of wouldn't have fit. Wow, they're suppressing her video. Well, that sucks. Let's change the spelling a little bit, see if we can force them to give it to me. Okay. Well, at least we got her channel. Huh. 3 years ago. Okay, so we're going to do just a little bit of this one. We're not going to do all of it, but we can do a little bit of this one. Only 100 views. Man, her channel. Let's see what her most popular. 13 years ago. 7 years ago. She was, look at old YouTube. The way YouTube used to be. I think my 67,000 view video, I think, is also from like 7 years ago. Look at that. Oh, when YouTube was a completely different platform. Oh, well.
With Jexa Energy,
I don't know how Sabrina Carpenter has anything to do with Enter a Chance to Win, but whatever.
Without the use of phrases, I do not want, I will not, and indeed without the particle not, that help books, including the 1984 book You Can Heal Your Life, unfounded Hay House Publishing. This is a person that has died on August 30th, 2017, and honestly, I don't know their full life's work. I know only what was linked to me by my friend who, just like me, suffer from migraines, and what she has linked rang such alarm bells for me that I decided that it could be a good idea for me to talk about it on a YouTube video rather than just...
Now, there's a reason why I'm doing this video. This isn't just because I like Mitra, because I do like her. I think she's very interesting. And it isn't just because the last time I did her video, I was half dead, and she called it out on her comment on her watch of my video. I have been criticizing Basecamp and their attempt at creating a new Christian denomination or Christian religion, which is Techno-Puritan. And they are criticizing mysticism. Not even monasticism, not even Catholicism or any other big ism, but mysticism itself as the downfall or turning point, dividing line between their version of Christianity and all of the versions of Christianity. And they're saying that it's the worshiping of the basilisk, worshiping a ball or ball light. It's really weird, and it's really crappy that they're doing this. So this is someone who is I believe she's a Luciferian, if I'm not mistaken. She speaks to a demon as part of her religious practice. She herself has designed her own religion and her own practices. So very in keeping with Basecamp. But Basecamp was more on the Christian conservative side. This is, I'm going to guess progressive. I think she's progressive. More liberal side of things. This is literally, she's worshiping Satan and Lucifer, so not a Christian in any kind of sense, although using some Christian terminology. So this is her criticism, and it's going to kind of match up with their criticism, but it's criticizing their way of doing things. And Basecamp, I'm saying. So this is going to be some good perspective for us on this channel for the bigger project that we're doing to outreach to people who are on the outer margins, who are rejects and are outcast and don't get a positive Christian message. Instead, just get criticism and get told that they're evil. Our whole point is to reach out to people who are being called evil, not because they're doing evil actions, but simply because they have beliefs that are incongruent with whatever orthodoxy or traditionalism is currently. And I don't mean orthodoxy and traditionalism as in religious orthodoxy. I mean as in like, oh, you're not woke, you're not a good guy. Oh, you're not conservative Republican, you don't believe in, all these specific things, you're not a good person. So this is like whatever the majority or whatever monoculture you're in, whatever that ruling is, somehow if you don't fit into that ruling, you're automatically labeled as bad. I'm saying, let's reach out. The job is the whole thing. Go to the lost sheep. We're here for the lost sheep. We're not here for the found. So this is our version of outreach. If you're here on this channel, if you're part of my mission to reach out to the outcast, to reach out to the loner, to reach out to the rejected, and to say you're loved, you're respected. I want to hear you. I want to listen to you. Let's do this thing. If you want to do that, you're about forgiveness. You're about second, third, fourth, million chances. This is the ride we're on. So let's do this.
Privately make fun out of it on a Discord group. One thing that we tend to forget is that any person can be wrong and be right, that they can have ideas and thoughts and actions that are good and that actually progress a specific field, and then ideas, thoughts, and actions that are very detrimental to other people's health and well-being.
And this is exactly what I brought up yesterday on my commentary, yesterday and the day before, on my commentary on base camps, track 3 and track 6, I believe.
We tend to just characterize somebody as, oh, they have been good and they're a trustworthy author because I have read a couple books from them, or this is not a trustworthy author because I have read a couple of books from them. It's
I don't think we're going to do Brian Hall.
rarely that simple. So
tonight.
for all I know, she has written good work. For all I know, somewhere in there's just like a smidgen of great inspirational living that will really help get on with your day. Being a AIDS advocate is a good thing. Starting a non-profit organization is a good thing. For all I know, this person did contribute to humanity in quite a few ways. It's just that the contributions that I found about them would say otherwise. So don't take it as a white and black thing. Don't take it as me going, hey, this... I'm telling you this because I see quite a few people that come to spirituality to fix their physical or mental problems, or attributing physical and mental problems to spirituality and therefore seeking spiritual solutions. Please always think about mundane, regular solutions for your problems. Don't go to a spiritual guru trying to cure cancer. That's
100,000%. Miracles are possible. Look, I literally had a cancer scare that I survived. I literally had a situation where I could not walk because of diabetes, where I had diabetic muscle loss, and miracles both times saved me. But I wasn't going to a guru. I wasn't going to a priest. I prayed and I started doing the work. And then in a religious mindset, I would then say, God then granted me that which I prayed for. Me doing the work didn't earn it. It was granted. It's grace. There's lots of people that do the work that don't get healthy. I got healthy. Whatever that secret formula is, I give that credit to God. That does not mean that I went to a healing mass and somehow got better. That's not what a healing mass is. A healing mass is about healing the spirit to prepare you for death, to accept your fate. So there's some misnomers with the verbiage that happen with some, I don't know if you want to call it miscommunication or misunderstandings of what things are. And what scam artists do, what con artists do, is they take that misunderstanding and they try to exploit it. And they try to give you false hope. And that's a big problem. But at the end of the day, you can't buy a miracle. That's Jesus' whole point. That's why Simon Magus is a bad guy in the Bible. Because you can't, that's why simony is a sin. You can't buy a miracle. You just can't. You can't earn it. You can't buy it. You either get it or you don't. And it's all by God's will.
Not gonna help you, and the amount of time that you spend not dealing with the problem that you have in some cases will make the problem disastrously worse. In other cases will just make you lose time. It is one of the self-help
Ow, I just
movement,
moved my
new
toe.
age spirituality,
That hurt.
positive thinking, motivational speaking, all of those things. This is one of the things that really impact people when it comes to those things that we attribute positive connotations to, going, you know, oh, self-help books are good, you know, positive thinking is good, new age spirituality is good, until it turns toxic, until what you're doing is actually
How does she do this? I'd like to be able to do that. I want to fade into my background. That'd be kind of cool.
delaying you from actually going and getting help. So please, if you have problems, go through regular approved methods first. You can do something on the side.
And this happened with my father. My dad went to holistic medication, and he made his condition a million times worse. And that's what led to his, we call it an incident or an event, 6.5 years ago that ruined my life, because I then had to take care of him from there, and other dominoes fell from that. It derailed my life, to put it bluntly, and hurt my marriage, hurt my career, hurt my finances. So don't go to holistic medication thinking it's going to solve your problems. If you want to use it as supplementation, you're going to say, well, hey, maybe this will help. No problem. But don't use it as a substitution. Now, some people might call me a hypocrite saying, well, hey, you cut out carbs and started running, started heavy weightlifting, doing 1 rep maxes deadlifting because of an article from Gatorade and the and the University of Florida. Like, how are you any different? I did it. I informed my doctor before I did it. I said, I don't want to get on medication. The doctor said, well, are you really going to do this? I said, look, if I'm not better, and I gave a deadline, I gave a goal. I said, look, if I don't see improvement by this point, and in fact, if I'm getting worse by this point, I will gladly take the medication. But give me a chance to try to fix it my way. And the doctor said, sure. And they watched and they tested a lot. They tested my blood 3 times a day. I was going to the doctor once a month. Like, it was a lot. And when the results were good, they said, yeah, you don't need medication. You're doing good. Just keep doing this. Don't go back to your bad habits. And every time I've gone back to my bad habits, diabetes comes right back. So, yeah, I get it, but I wasn't doing it unsafely, and I wasn't doing it against doctors' advice. I was doing it with everyone who was involved, my entire team, being informed that I was going to do this radical thing that just happens to work. That, you know, you had that TEDx talk about it. You have now proof that this actually does work. But the consensus at the time, the scientific and medical consensus at the time, was healthy grains, cardio, and rest, which is, all of that is wrong if you're diabetic. What you want is more fats and protein. You don't want so much that you damage your kidneys. You got to, control your diet. You want to control your carb intake. You want to have your carb intake be slightly less than how much you're using. Carb. You want your intake of food, of calorie intake, to be slightly lower than what you're going to be using for the day. You want to increase activity level. There's a whole lot of other factors. You want make sure you're getting all your micronutrients and everything else that you need so you don't cramp. You want to have enough water. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that you're doing. You're doing a lot of math, and you're doing a lot of blood work to make sure that your body is reacting the way you want it to react to these changes. That's very different than first case scenario, before anything else, going and asking a faith healer to fix your cancer and then never checking it. That's very bad, very dangerous. But saying, hey, I'm going to pray and I'm going to start working out and eating healthy and make prayer life part of my daily routine is very different than saying I'm going to go to a magic man or a witch doctor to fix my situation. And again, there's levels of desperation here. Your first attempt, your first shot should be with the doctor. If the doctor can't fix you and there's nothing else to do, then that's when you do the crazy thing. You don't do the crazy thing first and hope it works out. You have to be diligent in what you're doing, and you have to look at the results of what you're doing. And if you're just doing it blind faith, willy nilly, not believing in science, not believing in medicine, and thinking, the demon down the street, you're going to make a deal with them on the crossroads and suddenly you're going to be fine. You've been watching too much Supernatural. You know what I'm saying? You've been listening to too much The Pretty Reckless, and you've been confusing poetry and fiction with reality.
But go there, and when you're doing something on the side, really investigate where that thing on the side comes from. If you can't make any kind of logical conclusions where the author got their thinking process from, yeah, that's not a good sign. It's a sign that author pulled it out of their behind and published.
Yeah, and that's true with a lot of this stuff. So I got a lot of magic books over there. I was really big into studying the occult long after I didn't believe in the occult. Just to be very clear, I didn't believe in magic or any of that kind of stuff, but I was curious about what they were making up. And you try to go to their sources, and you find out that there aren't any sources, that they are just making shit up out of their ass. Well, it's bullshit. It's shit. It's literally shit. It's just made up nonsense. Doesn't work. When you find some authors that did some research, they're referencing someone else's made up stuff, but it all goes back to the 50s or the 60s or the 70s. And sometimes you get the 1920s, but you don't get a lot of really deep stuff. And then when you get to their esoterica, you get to their mythologies, and you look up what the actual myths are nothing like the myths that they report in these books. This is what happened to Bill Maher. Bill Maher makes zeitgeist based on these books from the 70s and 80s and 60s. And the books are bullshit. The sources they're citing aren't real. They don't exist. The quotes they're giving about certain mythologies are not the actual myths in the actual books. The translations they're using are rough, made-up translations, possibly written while under the influence of LSD. So you have this like psycho Cybin influenced, DHMD influence, drug psychosis and outer body experiences in these meditating hyper ecstasy situations, and it's just called making up fiction. So yeah, even if you're using some stringline truth, you're connecting the stringline truth with fictions, and then you're saying, look, I give you magic, and it's like, no, you're not. You're exploiting gullible people.
The book and sold it to you. It's not a sign that it's gonna, work. So let's get in.
The more you learn about Gardner and the more you learn about Crowley, the more disappointed you are if you're into the occult at all. These are not good figures. You look at LaVey. LaVey is such a scam artist, but people bought into his bullshit. And this is the same when it comes to who's that televangelist? Basically, anyone who's asking you to seed money. They're just con artists. They're taking your money. If they're asking you for seed money, they're asking you money for your faith, they're con artists. That's not true religion.
Into the article reading. Louise Hay
Prosperity
is one of the
gospel
founders of
is
self-help
evil.
movements. She's an author and created a positive healing technique. Through Louise's healing methods and positive philosophy, millions of people have learned to form more of what they need in their lives, more wellness in their bodies, minds, and spirits. With statements such as these, please pay attention to a couple of things. First, millions of people, citation needed, you're pulling number, you're not telling me where the number comes from, have learned to form more of what they need in their lives. So this kind of reads as has learned this methodology. It doesn't necessarily mean apply this methodology to their life successfully. Louise was able to put her rationalities into hone when she was diagnosed with cancer. She considered surgery and drugs, but instead created a specific program of affirmations, visualization, wholesome cleansing, and psychotherapy. In 6 months,
This is like the people who believe that the vegan diet is going to save them. It ain't going to save you from shit. If you stop overeating, that'll help you. If you have diabetes, veganism might just kill you. But now, if you have high blood pressure or you have high fatty blood cells, then veganism is going to save your life because you're no longer eating the thing that's killing you, namely the fat, the bad fat. If, on the other hand, you go and you start eating a bunch of sugar and candy because it's not meat, you're just gonna die. So like, just FYI, your your special diet isn't going to save you on its own. It has to be tailor made to your situation. So if your disease is carbohydrates, eating more carbs ain't going to help. If your disease is high polysaturated fat, eating more high polysaturated fat is not going to help. So these are, you can't just have like a general like rule of thumb that's going to fix everything, and this, this worked for me, so it has to work for you. No, you don't know the person's situation. You don't know their blood work. You don't know any of that kind of stuff. So just be careful. Oops, I skipped ahead, but it's
I
okay.
think I made my point. We can just now read a couple of funny ones. Bad breath. Anger and revenge thoughts. Affirmation. I trust the process of life. I am safe. Now, stress can make your gut health worse and can make your digestive processes worse. If you're stressed, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're afraid or that you're stopping some sort of process. At the same time, defeating.
And stress can really make you sick. When I was really diabetic, I was also really stressed. So stress can increase your insulin levels. Stress can increase your heart rate. So if you have a heart condition, stress can cause a lot of problems. That doesn't mean that having zero stress is going to be an answer. That also doesn't mean that that's going to solve all your problems. If you're eating 100 donuts a day or you're eating 40 donuts a day, don't matter how unstressed you are, you're going to get sick. If you're baking in the sun all day and you're not using sun lotion, you're going to have a chance of getting melanoma. Like there are consequences to actions, and no amount of something else that's good for you or that makes you feel better in a different area is going to help counter the really stupid thing you're doing that's exposing you to danger.
No longer caring for the self. Anxiety. I love and approve of myself. It is safe for me to care for myself. Aging problems. Everyone will have those. This lady died at 90. You bet she had aging problems. I'm sorry. I skipped one. It is kind of funny. Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease isn't funny. Desire to leave the planet. Inability to face life assess. Yes, if you get Alzheimer's disease, it tends to progress. You tend to die. I am not entirely sure that means that you actually want it to die. It's just some very old systems, like the whole karma system is in Hinduism, pretty much. I also think Buddhism takes some of it? Question mark? Don't quote me on that. It's definitely present in some New Age thinking spaces and New Age spirituality.
I have a friend of mine who believes in power of positive thinking, and her life has, and I advised her multiple times not to dive into it. And every time she does, yeah, she feels great about herself, but her selfish self-interest pushes everyone else away. She's like, why is my life falling apart? Well, because you're treating everyone else like shit. It's not about you being a people pleaser or not being a people pleaser. If you treat other people like shit, they're not going to want to be your friend, and they're not going to like you, and they're not going to treat you well. It doesn't matter how good you feel about yourself. So yeah, there needs to be a balance. You don't want to just do whatever anyone else wants. You got to have a line. You got to have standards. But at the same time, power of positive thinking ain't going to solve anything for you. It might make you delusional, might make you feel good about yourself, but it isn't going to actually fix your problems.
These spaces, we're blaming everyone's problems onto them themselves, and if you can't blame them,
shifting the blame is
onto them
also.
on what related, I'm gonna have them well into menopause, and in fact, they're gonna get a lot worse at menopause. After that point, they might fix themselves, or they might get worse, because for some people, after menopause, when hormones are no longer a factor, like I have read of one lady that was like, yeah, they now are happening because the weather changed. It is. Human body's amazing. It will and affirming yourself and motivating yourself and even aligning the circumstances by the sheer force of your will. Just don't replace real life world things with magical thinking.
Correct. That's probably the truest thing she said tonight. Magical thinking is a real problem for a lot of people. And not just people who believe in magic. People who do magical thinking in their life. Here's a great example. Childlike example. You're sitting in front of a car and you say, I want the light to turn red. Now, you pick, or you want the light to turn green, and it turns green. You're like, oh, I did that. You do it again. You do it 3 or 4 times. What you're not realizing is that your eye has been trained to see the color fading. So as the color's fading, you know it's about to turn. That's why it fades. It fades that way you know, but it's a very subtle fade. It's just enough to alert your mind, hey, the light's about to change. But now you're thinking that I can know when it's going to change. You're now involved in magical thinking. So if I move this soda can over here, someone in India is, I don't know, going to get rich. If I move it over here, someone in India is going to die. That's magical thinking. These things are not related. There's no butterfly effect in that way. Yes, there is a chain of events. There's causal events. True. But you doing something completely unrelated here does not change someone else's consequences there. They have their own free will and their own initiative that they are doing things. So this happens a lot in workplaces and workplace where people think things that are unrelated are affecting them, are affected by them. And, the misreading of communication, miscommunication, inability to have conflict resolving, all this kind of stuff comes from magical thinking, where you hate something or like something or want something a certain way, not based on fact, but based on intuition, based on opinion, based on just simple desire. And your self-obsession, your want to desire to protect yourself and to make everyone else the bad guy and yourself the good guy, twists reality. And every little lie you tell, this is from Jordan Peterson, every little lie you tell twists reality a little bit more. So it doesn't matter how small the lie is, the more lies you tell, the more twisting of reality until you can't see anything, to where you can't see the real world. You're now in a fantasy world. It doesn't need to be a bunch of big lies. It can be a bunch of little tiny lies. Even one lie is a twisting of reality. So you gotta try to live in reality. You gotta try to live in truth. And in fact, it's the only way to live at some point. That doesn't mean that there's not a room for fantasy. That doesn't mean there's not a room for hope. That doesn't mean there's not room for goal setting. All of that's important. Affirmations are important, but not if you're trying to live off affirmation. If you're living off hope, you ain't eating.
That will lead you absolutely
Sometimes you
nowhere
need
good.
substance.
And when something extraordinary happens, please investigate mundane reasons first. And all that you're going through in I do gaming on this channel. I have since I was 16. Experience, you kind of just wish to be understood. So I just hope that all of you are blessed by better families and better friends and doctors. The power of positive thinking did not work out. It gets them to rethink what they have been doing, but it is not a nice way of getting there. So I hope that that's not how they reach that point, as to where they're practicing some empathy and understanding and experiencing and how the world works. I hope that it's not like through first-hand account and first-hand experience, because that's it's you don't wish bad upon others. You don't wish the kind of things that you went through that others would go through ever. Honestly, if you have gone through some shit, you normally don't go, oh, I wish I was understood, so I wish that everybody could experience what I experienced. You kind of just wish to be understood. So I just...
Do you think it's okay, Thomas, to come on here and just speak Latin? Wow. Wow, Thomas. Well, et tu, Brute?
hope that all of you are blessed.
How you doing, brother? How's your night going? I think we're done with this video. I don't know why Sabrina Carpenter keeps showing, but this is such a bad photo of Sabrina Carpenter too. Like, it's like the most suggestive while being the least suggestive at the same time. It's like, don't have that photo be the photo. Let's see. What do we got going on here? We have... I think we're just about done. Thomas, anything going on with you? Hold on, let me... I'm just about to call it a night. I think I'm going to stop the video at the 30-minute mark, and I'm going to do a light workout since I can't do anything with my legs. I think I'm going to do some arms and some arm curls tonight. Here, you guys want to? Let's see. Let's see if I can do it in this one. Let me see. I think I got to lower it down just a little bit. There we go. Okay. Can I? Can I do it? Oh, let's not break that. Let's see if I can. I don't know if I can get the right angle. I don't know. I'm kind of upset that I'm not able to run for 6 weeks. I'm not going to be allowed to run. What did the doctor say? I can't run. I can't skateboard. At least I can't skateboard on this leg. I can probably still skateboard on my right leg as using my right leg to push, but I won't be able to use my left leg to push. And I can't deadlift and I can't squat. I love deadlifting. I used to hate deadlifting. Now I love deadlifting. So I'm very disappointed. So tonight I'm gonna do my workout inside. I'm not because everything outside. I have like a little gym outside, but it's all set up for like leg stuff. So I'm gonna do my workout inside, and then I got to go to work tomorrow. I got to get up at 6 a.m. I'm gonna go to bed in about an hour. Me and my wife are on talking terms again. So we've been having brief little 1 minute to 5 minute conversations. Not the deepest stuff, but we're trying to work things out. But yeah, I have not been reading this. I like this one. I'm enjoying this one. I haven't been reading it. I'm barely on page 87. It's really good. Tertullian, the one that I really should read, he really Against Mercy, and it's just so boring. It's covering things. It's like reading the Castle of Antero. I already know it's a giant. I already know God's a Trinity. So him building the case for it is just kind of like, we get it. But Jerome is great. Jerome, I'm having a lot of fun with. I need to apply for 3 jobs before Sunday. I haven't done it yet. I need to. I'm thinking about applying for the sheriff's department. I heard they don't have an age restriction. And I'm also thinking about maybe the post office. But yeah, I don't know. A teacher from America reached out to me. And honestly, I wouldn't mind being a teacher. What I really want to do, and this sounds so stupid, I know. I want to do biblical studies. I want to go back to school and do biblical studies. I love this stuff. I love doing theology. I've been doing it on YouTube now for 7 years. I want to do this for a living. I want to do biblical studies. So, all right. That's it. Thank you all for listening. Anyone who watched this tail end where I'm just talking to Thomas one-on-one, sorry. I like Thomas. We're having a little conversation, okay? Today is Wednesday, which means tomorrow night will be the last show for the week. I don't really have anything planned for tomorrow yet. I was thinking about doing some more base camp. I'm not really sure. I think tomorrow I'm getting out early, so I might send an email to Kevin Jen and to Michael Beverly. If either of them are available tomorrow around 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, I might be able to do an earlier show and talk to them. If not, it's going to have to wait till a Sunday. But I know we want to do that. We're going to have like an interaction. Me and Kevin are really chomping on the bit to argue with each other. So I'm hoping that happens soon. Oh, Thomas, I appreciate that. That's such a compliment. I hope you mean that and you're not just saying that to like joke, to tease me. But I thank you. I spent years picking up my knowledge base because I was such a jackass as a teenager. All right, we got it. We got to call it a night. I got to go work out. I got to do things. I got to sleep. I will let you all know if I send off one of my manuscripts by Sunday night. Hopefully I will. And I'll let you know how that goes. I don't know if I should tell you the company I send off to. I'm gonna get rejected. It's how it happens. It's gonna be like 4 or 5 publishers or agents, depending on who I send it to, before someone even says yes, or even looks at the manuscript I sent. But yeah. Oh, Thomas, thank you. Yeah, the I want to be very clear on that. Thomas is saying that he was. I'm going to say impressed. He's not actually using the word. He was impressed by uh, what I was talking about with my video countering Majesty of Reason. Um, Majesty of Reason was working on a level way above what I was working on. I want to be very clear. I don't want to pretend I'm on the same level as him. Usually, my arguments and my knowledge base is about on the same level of what Jimmy Akin and Trent Horn put out. I'm not saying the level of what they know, because they have degrees and they probably know a lot more than what they share. But at about that level of their sharing is about the level that I engage with on most things. And but Majesty of Reason really challenged me, because I don't have a good basis of Aquinas. I've read Aquinas. Um, no one's finished. I don't know anyone who's actually finished Aquinas. And I've watched a ton of Thomistic Institute stuff, but he was working on a level way above what I was working on. So my rebuttals to him were more based on what he said, not so much on what he was critiquing. Anyway, good night, Thomas. Good night, everyone. Have a great night. Here comes the music. Later.
It's infectious, so fight for your life and reject it. You better give me space, I'm protective. My adrenaline spikes when I'm threatened, and if you stay in my way, I'm aggressive. Cause when there's no exit, I'll kill when I'm desperate. When there's no exit, I'll kill when I'm desperate.